Hi, everyone, and welcome to week 5. Before we dive in, I want to start by saying this out loud. If this work has been stretching you, especially the way you think about behavior, that's not a sign you're doing it wrong. It's a sign you're unlearning some very old conditioning. So let's take a breath together before we go any further. Nothing to fix, nothing to solve right now, just arriving. Over the last few weeks, we've been building something very intentional. In week 1, we talked about dysregulation and stress responses. In week 2, we practiced noticing patterns and states. In week 3, we focused on regulating ourselves first. And then this past week, in week 4, we explored co-regulation in real-life moments. This week pulls all of that together because once you understand what behavior is actually telling you, your responses start to shift, not because you're forcing change, but because you finally have the right information. So this week, one thing we will be covering is mindsight. This was a term coined by Daniel Siegel, who is a neuroscientist and an interpersonal biologist and probably a whole bunch of other things I'm not naming. He says mindsight is essentially our ability to see within our mind and the mind of someone else using our imagination to try to understand what is happening inside of this person, in their body, brain, heart, and in their desires, their longings, and in their imagination that is creating the way that they are showing up in this moment. It's a desire to understand. It's a desire to be curious. It's a desire to see someone unconditionally without judgment, labels, accusations, or assumptions. Why on earth are they showing up this way? How utterly fascinating. Versus, what are you doing? We've all had that feeling, like when we are watching our child pour a bag of dog food all the way over on the bowl or some such disaster. And our insight is our longing to slow down, pause, and connect with what is happening inside their brilliant nervous system, their brain, and their heart. It is a gift because although our kids don't have the cognitive ability to understand it yet, they have a need of being seen. They're feeling it in their body and they're feeling like they're understood, like somebody gets them and that they make sense. That's what they're looking for. Our quality of offering that to our children depends on the ways in which we are showing up for ourselves, as well as a longing to understand why we are thinking the things that we're thinking, why we are assuming, labeling, behaving, and living the way that we are. Our goal is to be living with curiosity and compassion, not condemnation or judgment. Now, there are barriers to being able to practice this mindsight. The first, is conditioned beliefs about children. Thoughts like children are bad or children are manipulative, controlling, attention seeking. They're here to drive you absolutely crazy. They're disrespectful. They're defiant. This conditioning runs deep, and we must work on those beliefs. Wouldn't it be amazing to hold conditioned beliefs that our children are sacred, that they are wise and they are good and that they are whole? A second barrier is lack of understanding of developmental stages and brain science. Sometimes we have expectations of our children that may not be developmentally appropriate. For example, following directions and having an understanding of the why behind things, of being able to control their impulses, being able to self-regulate, being able to have empathy and understand the impact of their actions on other people, being able to really use their logic and reasoning is still developing until they're 11 or 12. Sure, they can sometimes show those skills, but earlier than 11 or 12, it is in the early developmental stages and is likely not going to be consistent. And sometimes holding our children to expectation that they cannot meet is likely to trigger our children into fight or flight, into that survival mode. A third barrier is judgment. This is a big one. We live in a society where good, bad, stupid, smart, lazy, disciplined, hardworking, all of those good or bad labels, and they are labels, they're judgments. We tend to get rigid in our longing and need to attach a label to an experience. That is our brain's job, actually, to make sense of what we are experiencing. So we need to be learning how to see beneath the judgment and beneath the label, actually learning to notice when we are in judgment and labeling and try to see underneath that. I will introduce you to a process called Root to Bloom. It's in your workbook and in the live call. In envisioning a plant from bloom to root, the behavior our child is experiencing would be the bloom. And we are seeing just that tiny bit of what is going on with our child. What we don't see is all the roots, the feelings, the needs, the thoughts, the beliefs, the longings, the desires, the dreams, the wishes, the hopes, the motivations, and the patterns. And it is very difficult for us to catalog all of that in a split second and inform our way of responding to a behavior and inform our physiology and our brain. It's a practice, and we are here to practice being able to catch ourselves when we are jumping right to label and judgment. The next barrier is fear and projection. So let's say that I was witnessing my child pouring that whole bag of dog food into the bowl, and I entered a state of fear. My amygdala, my stress center or fear center, our anger center, it gets activated. When this happens, it is telling our body to flood specific hormones into the body to protect us. Let's say it triggered a memory of me as a child trying to feed the cat and making a mess, and my mom would get enraged and yell at me for making that mess. Our job in practicing Mindsight is to recognize these experiences when they are happening, to see the layers of what is going on with us, just like in Root to Bloom, and be able to move ourselves back to safety. Another fear or projection example, we have an 11 or 12-year-old and they aren't doing their homework. They're refusing, and you're sitting there and your brain is going, if they don't do their homework, they're not going to get into college, and then they're not going to have a job, and then they won't get married, and so on. We start to spiral without knowing we are doing it. There are many times when our irrational fears may pop up when experiencing the behaviors from our children. The fifth barrier is lack of awareness and integration. This is when we don't necessarily recognize or integrate or believe the qualities of who we really are. Many of us learned as children, and even as adults, that we had to hide parts of our true selves to be accepted and to please others. And so we may not recognize some of our own qualities. We are complex and are likely contradictory and full of paradox. And so for those parts that we love or we hate about ourselves, they will determine our ability to see our children in those qualities. So let's say that I don't accept and embrace the qualities of me that are hardworking and diligent for some reason. So when I see my child being focused and hardworking, I may not want to support them in that, subconsciously. Finally, the sixth behavior is conditioned beliefs and limited self-perception. We are talking about the underlying unconscious or subconscious deep-seated limiting beliefs about ourselves. They may impact how we show up for our children in their behaviors. So in order to strengthen our Mindsight, we must first notice what our brain is telling us about the behavior showing up. And then we meet it with curiosity. We dig into the feelings, the unmet needs, those thoughts and beliefs of our child. We recognize the nervous system state, the context of what is going on around the behavior. Our child's behavior is communicating all of those things. Most of us were raised with a very simple explanation for behavior. They know better. They're choosing this. They're testing the limits. And to be clear, that story does make sense. It's what many of us were taught. But here's the problem with that lens. If behavior were simply a choice, insight would fix it. Consequences would work every time, and you wouldn't still be struggling with the same patterns of behavior. So this week, we're not asking you to excuse behavior. We're asking you to understand it more accurately. Here's the anchor idea for this week. Behavior is communication. It's not manipulation. It's not character. It's not a moral failure. Behavior is the nervous system's fastest way to communicate what's happening underneath, especially for children whose brains and bodies are still developing. When a child is stressed, overwhelmed, or activated, the thinking brain goes offline. Impulse control drops. Access to language, to logic, and to flexibility shrinks. That's why telling a dysregulated child to calm down rarely works. You can't reason a nervous system into safety. And this is where many power struggles begin, not because the child is choosing chaos, but because their system doesn't have access to the skills we're asking for in that moment. This week, we'll be working with a simple framework. Most challenging behaviors, they fall into one of three messages. 1, this is too much for me. 2, I don't feel safe or connected. And 3, I don't have the skills yet. And that third one is especially important because for many, many kids, particularly those who are impulsive or hyperactive or emotionally intense, the issue isn't motivation, it's access. They don't yet have reliable brakes for their body, their emotions, or their impulses. So parents worry when they hear this. If I see behavior this way, am I letting them off the hook? And the answer is no, we're not. We're not removing accountability. We're changing the order. Safety first, regulation next, teaching last. Because learning only sticks when the nervous system is calm enough to receive it. This week, you'll be learning a simple response model we'll practice together. Pause, regulate yourself first. Play, translate what the behavior might be communicating. Plan, respond in a way that builds skills, not just compliance. This doesn't mean you won't set limits. It means you'll stop trying to teach during survival mode. On our live call, we'll walk through real life examples at different ages. We'll practice translating behavior without judgment. We'll talk honestly about what this looks like in the moment, not perfectly, but realistically. You don't need to agree with everything yet. You just need to stay curious. Before the live call, I invite you to reflect on just one question. What is one behavior that consistently pulls me into reaction? Don't analyze it, don't fix it, just notice. What is that behavior? When it shows up? How does it make your body feel? What story do you usually tell yourself about that behavior? That's all the prep you need for this week. This week is not about blaming parents or excusing kids. It's about learning to read the nervous system instead of fighting it. And when we do that, something powerful happens. The chaos starts to make sense. And when things make sense, they become workable. I'll see you on the live call. Have a great week.